Yeah, I would think that for me, thinking for someone who has this question, am I loved, as a leader, you know, I need to do a better job at empowering these type of people, right? Is empowering them and say, hey, if you have an idea, bring it to the table. If if there's something we can do better, bring it to the table. So it's really empowering them because they're never going to take the step.
Right.
You know?
And you want them to be seen. That's the thing too. And so when they're not seen and cared for.
So kryptonite. So when they're in their scramble, that's really you see indifference.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
withdrawal.
Passive aggressive, probably.
Definitely passive aggressive. Which is why I think my question, because I'm very passive aggressive when my needs are not met. I don't agree so much, but yes.
And this is another one too. Going back to the conversation I said earlier, is when someone like this comes in, like is upset about their pay or something like that, it's probably not about their pay.
Right.
It's because they need to get your attention because they feel unheard, unseen. They're not valued.
And they'll use the only visible thing they have, which is a pay amount, to try to find their worth or love in that, when really there's ways to meet that in other ways. And so
it is ultimately appreciation, right?
Yes.
A version of appreciation. The pay is, is a correlation to how do you feel about me? Do you recognize me this dollar?
Yes.
This dollar's much.
Here's, I think, one of the real keys with this. It's when you text this person, call this person, meet with this person, you got to start with like the human stuff. Hey, how are you doing? How's your wife? How's your kids? How's your husband? How's that thing?
And then not only start with that, but actually listen, because I'll ask, and I'm like, yeah, great. Next,
we have to actually love people. I know it's tough. I know it's tough. And so, but I'll just say this: I know for you guys, you're trying to start organizations that are different. You don't want to have an organization that's just about making money. You'll make a difference in the world. And I think this starts with your team. And if your team, the core of every person is to feel loved, is it not? And if you create that culture, as cheesy as it sounds, a culture of loving your organization, what might that do for the community, right? And so that's what I pray for.
And I think what's difficult as a leader in an organization or a business owner is not the primary value being that they are a human being, not what they bring to the table.
That's right.
I think that's what comes across. I think I really do care about people, but what comes across a lot of times is my value for them is what they can do for me, what they bring for me.
That's true in the church world as well. Like, we're a volunteer-run organization, right? They're not even paid. And so it can be easy for that person to feel like they're just a part of the machine, right? Instead of, part of the body of Christ. And so,
and I'm thinking about maybe the business owner who's out there, and in their brain they're hearing all this, and it's making sense. Some things are resonating, but there's another voice in their head that's screaming, "Man, it's just really hard to run this business. Like, it's just hard enough to take care of our customers. It's hard enough to get those plumbing jobs correctly. It's hard enough to get paid for our work. It's hard enough to keep our equipment going. The tactics and what we do in the business is incredibly difficult. And now you're telling me that I've got to have this extra bandwidth to go in and be Dr. Phil for all my employees.
That's good.
Well, I think we all know business owners who have had businesses for 40 years, but they've never grown in their emotional intelligence. Right? And it is literally every time their name comes up in conversation, somebody might make a face, right? Or like, oh, you don't want to work there, or this person's going to be difficult to deal with, right?
So there's two things. Can I speak to that?
Listen, because this is really a question for this whole.
The first thing I would tell that business owner is this right here: is you got to think long term. Nobody changes in a day, but what if you changed 1% in being aware of this? Be patient with yourself. That's what I would say. We're all growing, all work in progress. And if you're running a business, starting a business, one of the more stressful things in the world you can do. And so don't add stress and shame to yourself. Try to get 1% better. And second, I think this is primarily about not something to do, but to be aware of. I think if we can be aware of this and not, we don't need to have necessarily Primal Questions day or hour. It could be helpful. I think there's, for your lead team especially, but being aware of this will just help you avoid, with some emotional intelligence, some of the pitfalls by just saying dumb things.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but at the same time,
I'll push back. Fine, that's fine. Let's go.
I feel like
Start the camera.
It comes down to a systematized, almost leadership framework to be able to take care of the emotional needs of everybody in the company. Right. So like there has to be, does that make sense?
It does.
Because like in all of my organizations, there's over 200 people. I can't keep tabs on 200 people.
Of course not.
Right. And so it's like, so there has to be some kind of framework of caretaking on the emotional side. Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting, I'm a pastor. And so, what I do, we try to create a structure of care, right? Where there's pastors and there's small group leaders, and their real goal is to help people feel really cared for and loved.
Yeah.
And that's similar organization. I think the lesson that for the business owners can learn is that you can't ignore this. We tend to ignore this to our own detriment. And you have to have a plan for this. Now, my counselor side wants to be patient with you as you make that plan. And because what tends to happen is we make a plan and we kind of screw up and we throw the plan out.
Yeah.
And because you're so busy already and so stressed, and so.
But I think if you're not aware of this, or you're not taking steps in this, your business is going to be spinning its wheels. You're going to see a lot of turnover.
Yep.
You're going to see.
Yep.
Right.
You're going to spend more time on the back end fixing the message you made. If this is working on versus working in, right? It does take some time working on how you as an organization do some of these things.
Yeah.
So you can work in a healthier way.
And I get, the most stress for me comes from a rogue employee or manager, right? That is unhappy, right? And
we're going to get to it just a second.
We can go ahead and lead into the fourth question. So good segue. Good segue.
That is. That's podcasting, guys.
Yeah. Question 4 is, am I wanted? Am I wanted? And this is my question. And so I feel, when I was sitting in there and reading through this, and I took the assessment that morning in the phone, because I avoided it because but then I'm like, am I wanted? And so now I can think back to the scramble where I would spend a whole weekend in my mind because of a difficult conversation I have to have the next week with a employee who's upset about something. And in my mind is, this person doesn't want me anymore. They're going to leave. And it's not even about the money or the headache of replacing them. It is, this person doesn't appreciate me or value me as a leader anymore, and they want to leave.
Yes. And that wounds you, right?
Yes.
And that's why when you start getting, it gets better when it gets personal. It does, because you feel it more. Typically, and this is true in your case too, a lot of middle children. What's middle children? That's the word, right? A middle child. This is not grammar class. A middle child will feel this question.
Yes.
Just kind of in the natural
core fear is being excluded, being replaced, or being shunned.
Right. But their gift, their strength, their superpower is they make people feel wanted. They are great. Normally they're great networkers, which is also true with you. Great networkers. They know everybody because they assume that everybody wants to be talked to and pursued and wanted. And I understand this one, but I don't have this question or this thing right here. And so it's funny. I have a few friends with their question, and you one of them. And I'm like, when I realized it, because I thought yours was, am I successful? Because you move the ball forward, you start new things. Your wife thought the same thing, right? But once you told me that, it did also, it clicked, and so it explains a lot as to why you pursue people the way you pursue people.
Yep.
Well, again, the counterintuitive nature of some of the projections is, because I think, when I think about you and you'll say something like, hey man, we want to go do this on the weekend, or I'm having this get together, or all this thing, in my mind, I'm thinking you're so safe in your just day to day because you're bringing people together and you're
so good at it.
You're so good at it.
Yep.
But the reality is what I'm saying is this is coming from a place of deficit. And my instinct is to look at you and go, man, he would never need an affirmation around anything about being wanted, because look what he's doing. He's bringing all these people together.
Look at what he started. Yeah.
And all these people are coming around him, and he's got these parties happening, and all these businesses and all these customers that you're dealing with. So I would never think that this is an issue. I would just have never thought it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
It is.
I think
really is.
and I think that part of it it kind of goes hand in hand with my Enneagram 7.
Yep.
Right. And so I just feel this, it kind of goes hand in hand. Am I wanted, but also missing out. Right.
FOMO?
Yeah. So it's like, oh, wow, these people went and did this. One, I wasn't invited, but man, I missed out on a great experience. Right.
Yeah. And
I never feel that.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I'm, let's say if I'm doing something on the weekend, I just know Leighton, he's good. Like he's going to be throwing a big party. I don't need to include him. He's fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff. So an employee that would, maybe this also is the one that always thinks they might be getting fired or
left out. That's the thing for them, is that idea of being
have a voice at the table.
Feeling wanted. Right. And I would say too, for the business owner, for all these questions, here's the thing we tend to fall into, is that we start a business or run a business to answer the question for us. That's always going to go badly, because no business can be the foundation for answering that deep question. Right. And so that's the thing you have to watch out for, that you can listen. Leighton has started, 5,000 businesses at this point, and he's successful and does this and still walks in that question.
Yeah,
and so that's lesson learned.
Well, and that's part of, and I've talked about this on other episodes, but I've had to train the people around me to not to protect me from hearing things that are going to send me into a scramble.
Yes,
and a lot of these would be what somebody has said about me. Right, I have no control over, and that information does me no good.
Yep.
Right,
but it makes you feel not wanted.
It makes me feel not wanted. It makes you feel, or calling me or texting me after like 4 p.m. when there's like nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it sends me into that scramble. So
that's interesting.
Yep. Anything else on Am I Wanted?
I think no, it's great. And listen, I've learned something about you today. So
hey, I like it.
Well, I'll tell you, there was somebody on our team at the church that was going through some hard things, and after walking through this, and I knew their question, I just made sure to say, hey, I know this is hard, but I want you to know that you're wanted here. Yeah. And I know, we're going to have good days and bad days, but you're wanted here. Yeah. And so I think that's part of the role of the leader, is to be aware on some level what people need.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, is being on top of the organization.
Yep.
None of the people underneath you are saying, hey, I'm glad you're here, right?
Yep.
They don't want you to be there because they want to get on Facebook, right? So, nobody's saying, I'm glad you showed up,
glad you're here today.
So glad, right?
And that's a good warning for the person that's running things, is your employees are not going to be your source of encouragement many times.
Well, they can't be.
They can't be. That's not the way.
And I think that's where, anytime I give a big promotion, I have to tell them, hey, your peers are not your peers anymore.
That's right.
And so get ready for things to change.
Yep.
Do you really want this?
Yep.
Because now when you're their leader, you can't go to vent to them, right? You can't talk about me to them anymore when I walk out of the room. You're now above them. And, and that's, I don't know if it was Andy Stanley or something, but one of his books, he talks about leaders are lonely.
Yes.
And
so true.
It is so true. Like who can you talk to that can empathize with what you're going through as the leader of the organization? Is not very many people.
And that's one thing that I would love to see change, is that leaders are lonely, but leaders can have a team around them of support. Yeah. Normally it cannot be from your organization.
And they can be vulnerable.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And I think that's part of being vulnerable with the team. Does not necessarily mean that you're weak.
That's really good. Yeah. And I'm sure you telling your people things that you need, that takes humility, right? Mm-hmm. But also you create, this goes back, a safer, healthier environment when you kind of, I don't want to say lower yourself, but when you're just honest and vulnerable. And so.
Cool. Question 5. Am I successful?
I just felt the seat get real hot.
Am I successful?
Ooh, let's get that AC on.
Yeah.
The fear there is to be seen as incompetent or underachieving.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like, one of these things, because you brought up, am I wanted, being a middle child sometimes, or am I loved being a middle child? Do you think, because I think of am I successful
as
would probably be an older child.
Firstborn, yeah.
And absolutely. Probably because as a parent, we put way more expectation on the firstborn, right?
Yes.
I remember catching myself when Carter was probably 10 or 11.
Oh, yeah.
Every time one of his younger siblings would start crying, we'd be like, Carter, what'd you do? Why? You're in the playroom with them. Why are you making them cry?
Yes.
Fix it.
Yes.
Right? We're trying to watch a show.
Stop looking at them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So,
but it does make sense when you talk about the firstborn child because, you know, a lot of parents, they want, you know, they want to live through their child in a way.
Yes.
And that child's track to success is part of their own identity.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally there's a tendency to push, you know, because you sort of give up on it by the second child.
Absolutely. You're too tired.
But for that first child, as a extension of your own personal legacy, there's this pressure to say, hey, listen, you know, we want to see you achieve great things. We want to see you do great things because that's our identity.
Yeah. Well, but not even that. And I was actually talking in my therapy session a couple weeks ago is that I feel like the root cause is not necessarily wanting to live, in my own instance, is not necessarily wanting to live through my kid, but I want to avoid the shame of what other people think.
If your kid
right. So it's like, especially like with sports, it's like, oh, my kid has to be good at sports, right? I mean, look at all these people that spend a lot of money and waste all their weekends on playing the sport for the kid.
Your kid's not very good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but you feel that shame, right? And it's like, well, my kid gets in trouble at school. Well, I'm just embarrassed. I mean, how could he, you know?
Sure.
Say 69 in class. You know, it's like, what is he thinking?
Wacky Christian fun.
Wacky Christian fun. Like, we've got to stop watching The Office. No, the funniest part is that it was actually written on the slip, the yellow slip, in quotes, 69.
That's
frowned
upon.
Yes.
That's frowned
Can't say that. Can't say that.
But Jason, you said something earlier that I really liked, and for myself, that am I successful is my question.
Mm-hmm.
No business is ever going to fix this.
That's
no marriage is ever going to fix this.
No kid.
No kid. No
money.
Hobby.
Yep.
Nothing will ever fix this question.
Yep.
And so for me currently, you know, my track is trying to let go of some things in my past that I feel like I was not as successful as I should have been. Trying to let go of that.
That's painful, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It's tough. And then rewiring some of that self-talk to go forward.
Right.
That's one of the biggest challenges I feel is that I don't care what I have done. It will never be enough.
Yep.
It'll never be enough.
Yep.
That the fire never gets extinguished. It's just on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next
Well,
thing.
you listen to these famous athletes, famous pop stars. So Taylor Swift has the Swifties. What is y'all's fan base called? We got that down yet?
For
the Busy Smalls podcast. Y'all need to figure that out quick for the merch.
Oh, I do like that.
Yeah, I like it
so
too.
I'll be on that.
Question 8.
The Smallies?
The Busies.
Busies. I don't know.
We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm sorry.
BS.
We can crowdsource this.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
BS.
What I would say for all of us, and especially this is your question, the key is to redefine what success is. Because athletes, pop stars that have made all the money, got all the awards, they still say it's not enough.
Yeah.
And it's because we have defined success unsuccessfully, right? And I think for every person, we have to, there's this saying in Scripture, we have to focus on faithfulness and not fruitfulness, right? And I believe if we're faithful over a long period of time, good fruit will come. We just can't always choose the fruit that's going to come. And so, and we tend to want more fruit than what comes. You know, we want bigger, faster, all those kind of things. And so it's redefining what success actually is.
Yeah, I feel like on the am I successful, because right, the kryptonite is failure, and then I kind of couple this with probably a 3 on the Enneagram.
Yes.
It probably correlates with this, an achiever, right?
Yep, very much so.
And I see the pitfall is, you know, some taking shortcuts, right? Or even not as long as everyone else sees me as successful, then I'm content, not actually being successful.
Right.
you know.
And I don't think that that's really just if I can push back a little,
Yeah.
I don't think that's the deepest issue here. The deepest issue for someone like this, for myself, is you do things and you don't even really know why. You don't even know. There's a lot of self-deceit that goes on because you think that, you know, these actions, these behaviors, these activities are necessary and important, and that's who you are. You end up working for a boss that doesn't even care about you, and, you know, mentally. And so I think that's the worst part, is the self-deceit. It's not the you know, kind of what you were getting at, and so that's the thing for me, is that, you know, who am I taking orders from, and does that person even care about me?
Wow.
Because, yeah, let's just get real.
That's real. It's like, what's driving you, right?
Exactly.
Like, what is actually making me go this speed and go this hard? Like, what am I trying to accomplish here, right?
Right.
And that is getting some deeper waters there. And so,
Well, these are definitely valuable people in an organization,
Oh, yes.
especially if they are like in a sales position, right? But I think as a leader, you have to help them define what the success is.
Yes.
You have to give them a goal,
Yep.
right? And I've seen people with Am I Successful, like set up these goals for themselves that actually hurts them and makes them less
right.
money.
That's right.
But they're like, I just need to get to this number.
Yep.
And they'll do whatever it takes to get to that number.
Ruin their life.
Yes.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm just like, I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, this has to be miserable for you.
Well, you think in a sales world, like real estate, right?
Yeah.
Which is dependent on so many things outside of a realtor, correct?
Yeah.
And so you have to define what success is in each season.
Yeah.
Because the market now is different than it was in 2021. And so
Yeah.
if this is your question, when times are low or times are tough or interest rates are high, whatever it might be, you have to, as the leader, help redefine what that win is for them.
Mm-hmm. You know, you mentioned something earlier about when somebody wanted to, or they got upset and they wanted to leave the company, how you reflected back into, I'm not wanted.
Enough.
Yeah, but for me, it's the same. It's a similar feeling, but it's different, because if somebody's in the same situation at our company, I think I wasn't good enough. Like, I wasn't good enough. I didn't create the right atmosphere, the right.
You
people.
failed.
I failed ultimately. It wasn't about, you know, do you want? I don't care if you want me or not. It doesn't really matter.
You want to win.
That's right. That's
Yes,
right.
yes.
I was deficient in some.
So let me ask you this: when business slows down, which happens,
Yeah.
how does that hit you? Is it like torture?
Oh, it's bad.
Okay.
It's bad.
Okay. So can we do this for a minute? Can I do a
Please.
little? So in that moment, as you think back, how have you scrambled? How have you kind of what I call, you can say scramble, or how can you cope in unhealthy ways? What do you tend to do? Obsess over numbers? Do you?
Yeah, well, we talked about this in the previous episode, but ultimately, I find myself really lost in the things that are external.
Yep.
Rather than just refocusing on my self-worth is not determined by the scoreboard. The scoreboard is not my self-worth, is ultimately what it comes down to.
That's
just
good.
This long 10, 15-year journey of learning that the scoreboard is not my self-worth.
Yep.
And it's taken a long time.
And you'll keep learning that. That's the grace and patience for with ourselves, is that if this is kind of something that's kind of wired in you, it's probably always going to be there, and God's going to use that in all kind of good ways and good things. And it will eat at you less and less as we get older and older, but it's there. So
one of the things that wasn't taught in the class that you did, but
sorry,
your predominant question, you also have like a secondary question that's usually on either side.
It's like
right?
it's like the Enneagram
yes.
wing.
And someone sent me this and said, you sound like the promoter, which is I'm a Q4, which is wanted, plus Q5, which is success.
Yeah.
And
I'm a Q6 plus Q5. And so even when you're talking, I resonate a bit with that of the scoreboard dictates how I feel about myself. That resonates. And so you being that makes you like the promoter.
Yeah, so it says they define the promoter as someone who is sought by others to help them succeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
That resonate with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, that's the deep dive.
Yeah.
That's the comeback meeting. So
And I've shared with you this anecdote before we switch to the next one. the prototypical, am I successful?
Mm-hmm.
So Paul McCartney, I love writing songs, but Paul McCartney,
A Beatle, yes.
A Beatle,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
So there's a quote from him here maybe a few years ago, where he basically is saying, I'm still going. There's still another song in here. I've just got. There's another song. You're talking about one of the greatest songwriters of all time. He needs no validation.
It's Paul McCartney.
Anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most famous songwriters of all time, and he's sitting here at 80 years old thinking, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to write the best song I've ever written. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
There is something beautiful about a person that's driven to do great things. I don't think we should, crap on that. At the same time, if Paul's doing that to validate himself or to find something, that's where it's unhealthy. And that's the work that we have to do in our own hearts, our own souls, with a counselor, a friend, whatever you want to call it, a pastor, to really identify what's driving me. Because it's good to be driven. I think ambition is good. People with ambition can do great things, but it's never going to also fill that void.
Yeah.
That's the...
Would you think that most entrepreneurs, people starting businesses, would have this question, am I successful? Probably.
I would think a lot do, yes. Yeah. And it's great for an entrepreneur to have that question. I think if they're one or two, that's going to be a tough start for them, because they're going to feel like, ooh.
The risk avoidance would...
Yes, be so difficult. But your question, which of course y'all both are business owners, is going to be really helpful. I think a little more natural in that start.
Cool. Next question. 2 left.
Oh, am I good enough? This is my question.
That's Jason's question.
And so my question to y'all, am I good enough? So just some validation would be nice. Y'all didn't say anything. Cool. My core fear, the core fear for this question.
We wouldn't have had you on here if we didn't think you were good enough, Jason.
That really means a lot to be on a Busy Smalls podcast. From now on, when I ask that question, like, no, I was on that podcast. I'm good.
Yeah.
Is to be judged, negatively thought of, or criticized, which is always fun for a leader, because what's the thing? I think it's a Nick Saban quote. If you want to be a leader, you got to be okay at criticism. If you want to be liked, go sell ice cream, that kind of thing. When you're at the top, people are going to say things. Employees are, customers are, people are.
So when you hear the word people pleaser, does this fall under this category, or does it fall under the successful category, or a little blend of both? What do you think?
I think the pleaser on a successful is a little more fake. They please people to win. I please people to feel good enough. And so that's, I think, a similar but different, right?
Yeah.
Primal gift, though, is they see unique value in people. They find the people that might feel like they're not good enough and say, no, you're this thing here. I see this in my life, my ministry, that, this is what's beautiful in counseling, because in counseling, people come a lot of times like in the worst part of their life. Mm-hmm. And to be able to sit in that with them, and to love them, to remind them God loves them, and to remind them there is great hope. They have great value. Because when someone's coming in that's battled addiction for 5-10 years, you know what they feel like? They feel like crap. They feel not good enough. But every person is made in the image of God. And God loves and sees all people. And so the kryptonite, though, and this is where I know, is criticism.
Yeah.
It's criticism. And here's where it's tough for a leader, a business owner, is we tend to take criticism of the organization onto ourselves. And that is exhausting.
Yeah.
100%.
Because, there's always going to be, there always should be criticism, because no organization, no leader is perfect.
Well, and I've, Busy Smalls podcast, I've made a commitment to myself not to read the reviews, the comments.
Yeah.
I mean, there are thousands of them already. I have turned them off.
Yes.
To be honest with you.
Yes. These guys don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
He's always stretching on the podcast. Things like that. Eat a banana before you go on the podcast. Things like that.
Yeah. I just don't even.
You can't listen to those things, man.
I
go back to once a week for your massage, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I don't listen to the criticism. In fact, my wife gives me enough. Okay,
she does. Apparently, me too.
Yes, she critiqued you before you even came on
just
here.
Just let her know that wouldn't be to my core.
Yeah.
And so, but I know I'm good enough because I'm on the podcast.
Yeah,
so it's fun.
Well, I was just thinking as you're reading through that, Jason. Many times we've had lunch.
And
great lunches. I feel like every time I walk out of that lunch, I feel encouraged.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's coming right out of who you are.
It's that is the strength of gift. Is there a lot of times they're encouragers. A lot of times these are Enneagram 2s and 9s. I've noticed. Me and my wife both have this question, and so our fight.
You are both 9s.
She's a 2.
She's a 2. A helper. And a peacemaker.
So, yes. So our fights are very passive aggressive, very passive aggressive. And so, I mean, I don't do that. She does that. And so,
of course.
We're praying for her, working through that with her. And so,
well, for me and my wife too, though, it's am I wanted, am I loved? And so we avoid any painful, any kind of painful conversation.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've heard you talk a couple of weeks ago, and you brought this up in front of the group, and you shared kind of your pastor. You feel like you've pinpointed your childhood, where this kind of came from.
You think about childhood. You mentioned my. I want to be clear on this podcast. I was 13 mile district when I played basketball at Southwood.
Yes, you were sophomore year.
Went down from there.
Yes. So your only patch on your Letterman jacket was from your sophomore year.
There was a patch though.
Yes, there was a patch.
And that jacket is still in my closet to this day.
So that would mean that you were one of the top 15 players.
Yes.
Your sophomore year.
Yes. After that, I suffered.
How is that even possible?
What?
To not. I mean, if you're
who did I meet the summer of my sophomore year?
We started playing a lot more video games.
A lot more.
Honestly, he saw me play and was like, I can never be this good.
I'm not good enough.
I'm not good enough.
Full circle.
But no, actually, but to be honest, on that, when he was a sophomore, he had some really tall, talented people on his team.
Yes.
That were seniors.
Yeah.
And so he was able to play point guard.
Yeah.
And then they all left. And he's playing center. There's like video footage of him guarding Stromile Swift, you know, 6'11".
Okay. And in that moment, you are not good enough.
I remember going to one game and literally Evangel had these like foreign exchange students that were 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
And Jason's going up against them for the tip off.
That's right.
The funniest thing.
And so real quick, but we saw one of my former coaches a few weeks ago. And what was his first thing he said when he saw me? I want everybody to hear this for the record.
Which coach?
Coach Adams at the funeral thing.
Okay, yes. What did he say?
It meant a lot to me, apparently. He looked at me and said, "Oh, it's the Stromile Swift killer."
Oh yes, he did say that. He did recount a time where Jason, somehow this footage is missing. But
it's not missing. It's there.
Show it. But that he hits a hook shot over Stromile Swift.
Yes.
That's the story.
All-time Shreveport hoops legend.
Yeah. Played in the NBA.
Yes.
Played for LSU.
Yes.
6'11" or something like that.
Could not stop the left hook shot. Couldn't stop it. Right now, he is somewhere thinking, "Gosh."
I think he probably thought you were like having a seizure or something. Like, what's this guy moving this way?
Is he okay?
Like, call the medics. Oh, he shot it.
Oh, good shot.
They thought it was a Make-A-Wish. Jason did look like he had cancer.
I weighed 130 pounds.
Yeah.
And then I ate myself when I was 27 years old.
Yeah.
And I doubled in weight.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Back to
I played sports growing up, and my father enjoyed that, and would push me, and in that, what can happen is it's never good enough. You're not good enough, or there's not enough, and then that question kind of sticks with you. And so many of us grew up in these environments where criticism, right?
Or your performance was tied to love.
Yes. And so I found, with even my own kids, like making sure their room is picked up perfectly and straight, and they do this, and I can find myself being overly critical, and that is what tends to create this question of, am I good enough? I can see this in my oldest son a little bit, as he's always making sure that I am pleased and all those kind of things. So you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Jason definitely has some OCD tendencies. Like, everything has to have a place. Like, him coming over to my house probably drives him crazy.
No, it's not my house.
So, okay.
Okay, like I've learned with my wife, she is not wired this way. She's wired wrongly. And she thinks it's okay to like leave shoes in places and it's not their home. And listen, that is God's to judge one day. And He will judge. He's a wrathful God.
Yes.
And
but shoes have a place. They have a home.
Yeah. The closet. Or maybe in a select place by our bench by the bed. They don't go in the living room, Tracy. And so everything has a home. And now I have learned, like I go to somebody's house, it's not my house, I really don't care. Okay. That like some parts of the house are not my house. Okay. Let it go. That's Tracy's. I don't want to fight about this. And so that's just growth in me. It's all it is.
It is. It is.
Praise the Lord.
Praise Him.
Seeing themselves as a victim. So what I found, the people, am I good enough? Those just really frustrate me as a leader.
Yes.
Right? Because it's like, hey, I'm criticizing you to help you become better.
Yes.
Or to, succeed at your position more.
Yep.
But they take it very personal, right? And feel hurt and threatened. And sometimes they do shut down or pull back.
I'll tell you my job. Nobody likes me.
Or they push the excuse off on somebody else. Well, it was this person, or why?
So I own it all. Okay. If there's criticism, I'm a pastor at a church. If somebody criticizes the kids ministry, I'm not the kids minister, but I'm the leader, and I take it all on me. I don't blame the kids minister or a kids volunteer. I blame myself in an unhealthy way.
So what does the scramble look like for you?
I shut down.
Like what you start thinking worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario. I go a bit into my scramble, almost like this kind of, I'm an Enneagram 9, and when they're in a healthy place, they go to Enneagram 6. And I think the world's going to end. I think everybody's going to leave my church. No one's going to come see me as a counselor. My kids are going to grow up and they're going to hate me. And this is my life going forward. And so what I'm going to do in the next 2 hours is I am going to turn off everything. I'm going to watch TV, get under a blanket, and just shut it down. That is my, I feel like y'all are judging me right now a little bit. And so, trying to be vulnerable here. And so that's kind of my scramble, my avoidance. Yeah. And so.
Well, so for a person, if another person is like you, how do you help them deal with that criticism? What if you're going to criticize
that's good.
yourself, how do you lead into that?
This is going to be the old school thing you've heard, right? It's the sandwich. It is the recognize where they're doing well. You give the insight into where they need to improve, and then remind them that they're part of the team and that they need it and they're doing well. Yeah. It really is the sandwich.
Yeah, I think
but maybe they're only hearing the baloney.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, listen, this all thing it's not your job to make somebody healthy. Yeah. Your job is to do things in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So if somebody's unhealthy, and this is their question, you can be as loving as you want. You've got to give the insight and the criticism, right? And so you do that in your way. This was tough for you, being successful. You can't guarantee success because on some level, it's the employee's job to be healthy. And all you're trying to do is create a healthy environment and have some emotional intelligence. Make sense?
Yeah, and I think for me, if there's criticism going in from me or from someone else to someone else, it's criticize, but come with a solution.
Absolutely.
Don't just come and beat them up and walk away.
Yes.
Right? And so that's always I
think this is definitely my question, but I think for anybody, most people, you can't criticize 5 things.
Yeah.
You can maybe bring 2 things to work on at the most. Most is just 1 thing.
Yeah.
Because listen, we all have 10 things we can work on, right, in our own life and leadership. Yeah. But when someone comes to me and says, okay, you suck as a preacher, and man, the way that you lead our small groups, and guy, you counsel somebody, like, you give me all that, I'm going to hear nothing, right? Yeah. But if you come up with 1 thing for me to improve on in my life, then I can deal with that. And so it's just,
Yeah.
So oftentimes I'll tell people within our organization, I'll say it this way: it's okay to be critical.
Yeah.
We need
it's helpful
to be critical.
Yeah.
We don't need people to be overly negative.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you be critical and not be overly negative in your delivery? Because if somebody comes to me with that, with the message of, hey, I don't think this is right, I think we need to work on this, and they do it in a way that doesn't have that sort of ad hominem of, and by the way, you suck.
Yes.
Right? It's much easier to take that feedback and go, okay, I think we can try to work towards something.
Well, this is the thing where you're going to criticize the thing, not the person. Like, you're not going to go to their identity. Like, you suck as this, or work on this thing. That's a big difference, and that's a big wide difference in those two things. And I think the other tendency, if you're a leader, this is your question, or a business owner or whatever, is it can be easy to just surround you. I hate negativity and criticism. It drains me. And so I can have a tendency, but we need people with a critical eye, do we not?
Yes.
And so we have to put on big boy pants and surround ourselves on our team with people who are going to have a critical eye, because they can improve the organization.
And this is my strength, is being critical.
Well, this is like your family's strength, I feel like.
But I feel like one of the areas I've grown the most in being a leader or being on a team is, not necessarily just being so critical about everything and letting some things slide. I remember one of the first teams we were on, our leader had to bring out a process for us to brainstorm, because everybody in the group would come up with like an idea and I would just shoot it down.
But we had green hats.
I was like, that ain't going to work.
That's the hats, right? The hats.
So then everybody stopped. So everybody stopped giving ideas, because I was just going to beat it up. Yeah,
it does.
And so,
well, this is the thing too. Like, especially as a leader, you always have the loudest voice in the room, and you're going to want those. A lot of times, this question, let them talk first. Because if you talk first, well, I'm not good enough. I can't say anything to that, and I'm not going to get their idea. And so let them go first.
Well, and don't try, like, you got to pick your battles, right? And so sometimes I'm in with my group, and they make a decision that I wouldn't have made, or a decision that I didn't bring, that I don't agree with, but it's still going to work.
Yeah,
right? I don't have to impose myself.
Yeah.
And so
that's tough.
Yeah. All right, last question.
Do I have a purpose?
Do I have a purpose? Purpose-driven.
Purpose-driven
podcast right here.
Yeah, this is Rick Warren's question for sure.
Yes. Do I have a purpose? This probably resonates the least with me.
Yeah,
because someone close to my organization took this and that's theirs, and I'm just like,
This is the person that wants greater meaning out of what they do. So what the core fear says here, is being meaninglessness. Meaninglessness is that if they feel like their job has no greater purpose than just making money or doing this task, right? They want to see how it's going to benefit the world, right? Mm-hmm. And so even when I'll do a devotion or a prayer for your meeting sometimes, I want to remind your team, like, well, I believe y'all's greatest purpose is to help people find a home. That's a great purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And the gift there is their passion, their vision can create great things for the world. They hate pointless work. They hate it. But this person, and we've seen this is the one who keeps getting a different job every 2 years because they want to find the job with the greatest purpose in the world. And but I would also tell those people that, like, any world you're in has great purpose because it has people involved. If there's people involved, we have a chance to be a light in the midst of darkness, to be that encouraging voice, to do things the right way. That the world has changed, not necessarily by nonprofits and all these different things. They are, but I think it's really changed in the workplace as we have great plumbers, as we have great businesses, we have these great things. If those things are operated the right way, that's a really good world.
So I guess this would be someone on your team would be great at having them with the role of like community involvement, outreach, whatever that is. And one of my companies, we do try to get involved and do things, and so
put them in charge of that. It's you're going to constantly remind them. So we talked about what is the win earlier, right? For a successful person, for them, you have to remind them that the win is greater than growth, right? The win is whatever you're trying to do in the community, whatever how your organization can benefit the community, right? And so it's constantly putting that in front of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think of like just something like plumbing, right? And that could be a tedious task, right? But painting the picture of, hey, if we don't go solve this problem,
absolutely,
this family is going to have this headache, right? And so you're almost like you're a hero with the plumbing wrench. Is that even a thing? A plumbing wrench?
What you're going to use there is the plumbing flagulator. I got nothing. You just jiggle the handle. And
Jiggle the handle.
I've gotten to the point where I can pull the top off and do something with the big ball thing, and that helps stop it.
Yes.
So call me for your plumbing needs.
Oh yeah. We have a position.
Okay. Where else my resume to? We're saying that kind of, but it's very true. If my toilet is stopped up and a plumber comes to fix that or to fix a leak, that is making my home better. I can not worry about raising my kid. I can love my kids better. I can spend time with my family. That's a great thing.
Well,
for the
goes
world.
that goes into a marketing piece, right? And this is another topic, another podcast. But you want to market in this kind of
That's right.
same kind of bucket is what's the purpose you're serving. Like you're not selling a roof or shingles, right? You're selling protection. You're selling, you don't have to worry about leaks. You're selling, you'll protect your home, right? And so,
Well, we've seen it here lately, through COVID and the essential businesses and all those things that got rolled out. Ultimately, the guy who delivers your milk to the grocery store is very important. And in our typical American way, we don't really put a lot of value or emphasis towards the positions like the plumbers or the delivery guy or you name the job. There's so many of them out there, but the reality is this: we are so interwoven from your job as a pastor to your job as a business leader to the engineer recording the podcast. We're so interwoven together. And you said where there's people, there's purpose, which I really loved, and it's so true. It doesn't matter. Not everyone has to be the A-list actor or the superstar basketball player like Mr. Woods.
That's right.
I mean,
there's one of me.
There's value everywhere, and telling your story in that way that we're all a part of this big thing, I think is huge from a marketing standpoint.
It's inspiring too. I think about walking in your store, right? That your employees have a chance to, in a sense, turn that customer's day upside down in a positive way through, because we live in a efficient, isolated, kind of cold world. And I would hope that the businesses that are created are the opposite of that. It's why Chick-fil-A is so backed up, right? It's because people go there, they feel a bit seen. They feel like they've thought through this. I feel loved going through there. Those kind of things resonate with the world. And one thing I get passionate about is what if that was the norm for the business culture in our area? How would our community look different? It would. It'd be much more ethical. I think about the real estate world, full of, or even the world you're in, not always most ethical. If that was different, how that could change the world. So,
well, I think that as a business leader, we have to provide an environment in our company, especially the bigger you get, where everyone feels like they're a part, right? You're sharing these stories or these successes and these wins. Like there is a scoreboard that they know that they're hitting, but then they can leave that environment or that meeting, whenever it is, and say, even though I'm a small part of it, it is way bigger than me, and I do have play a big part in this.
Well, you think about our community in the real estate world for a minute. You have real estate agents that many times are finding homes for military families. I can't think of a much greater purpose than that. The people that are doing all this stuff and serving and being moved across the country to be able to hold their hand, help them find them a home that's good for their kids to find schools. They can move here and get moved in. That's great purpose. Like it really is. And to remind them of that's, I think, a really helpful thing.
I like it.
So this has been really helpful for me, Jason. Thank you for coming.
What is your next step with this?
So it starts with awareness.
Patience.
Listen, I'm going to understand. I'm going to walk out of here knowing a little bit more about myself. I'm going to walk out of here knowing a little bit more about people. I'm going to be a little bit more dialed into, hey, where is that coming from when I recognize it? Again, I asked you the big question earlier was this business owner who's thinking, I don't have time to be this therapist along with this technician. And I think that the full circle piece of the conversation just comes down to the idea of this is where there's real meaning in what we do. And to make it simply about the technical, the plumbing wrench, turning the wrench, what have you. It's an appreciation and an understanding that as business leaders, we're called to do more than just fix pipes or sell houses. We're called to do more than just sell lumber. We are called to be a part of this thing, this local network of people, this community is probably the best way to say it.
Yeah.
We are called to be a foundational part of the community. And I think that's what I've gotten from going through this whole run of these questions, is understanding more about how I can play my part in this community.
That's good.
Yep.
Can I add just a couple things?
Sure.
I think first thing I would tell any kind of leader or business owner that's listening to this, you have to start with yourself. You reproduce who you are, right? And so if these questions for you remain unanswered and you remain unhealthy, remain unhealed, there's a good chance you're going to reproduce that in your organization. And so you have to start first with just personal health, personal growth, that I think is found in all kinds of way through, of course, in my faith, that would be getting to know Jesus. It also, I think, would involve maybe talking to someone to help you walk through these things, a good friend, a good mentor. So get healthy yourself. And then second, I think it'd be a great thing for whatever your leadership team or your employees is just have them take this assessment on their own time, send you their feedback, their answers, and it gives you just a platform of understanding. And then from there, you can maybe know how to frame things for certain employees or understand why they're being a jerk.
Yeah.
And that could be helpful.
Yeah, and I have a meeting after this that I'm not really necessarily looking forward to, but I realized I didn't have this question or Enneagram for this person, right? And kind of leads me, because I really base that. Yeah, so I texted somebody yesterday, said, hey, we need a master list of everybody in the organization, Enneagram, and their question.
Yep.
So
it's good
stuff.
Exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
Check that out.
It's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it?
Yeah,
yes.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Jason.
It's great to be here.
We'll see how the performance does, how many listeners, and
metrics.
we might bring you back. If there's another topic.
So what you're telling me right now is if I'm not good enough, I do not come back.
Well, got us.
Remember the sandwich. Good job, Jason.
You did a good job today.
You did a great
Might
job.
not come back.
Jason, great job.
I
Great
still
job.
love you.
Great job.
Okay,
All right.
All right.
See you
Thanks,
guys. Bye.